Game week 3 of the Premier League will be starting very shortly, and hopefully Aston Villa will be getting the win this week, as so far we have got a draw and a loss. But in this episode, what we're going to be doing is firstly checking out how well we did with our predictions last week and see whether we did better than in game week 1. Then we will be predicting game week 3 matches, and hopefully Aston Villa can get a win there. And then finally, we'll be checking out the FPL teams, as I've not been doing very well so far, so it looks like we might be making some changes this week. But like I said, let's start off with our game week 2 predictions and seeing how well we did. Starting off with game 1, which was West Ham taking on Chelsea. So West Ham obviously had a really good start, scoring at first, but then got absolutely battered 5-1. We went for the 2-0 win there for Chelsea, so we did manage to get the 1 point for guessing the result. But I have to say, West Ham are looking dire this season, and I'm not sure how well they're going to do. They're going to be sat probably near the bottom of the table and potentially have the chance of getting relegated. But now we'll move into game number 2. That is Tottenham versus Manchester City. So this one I did think would be a close game. However, I had it swaying in the favour of Manchester City. However, Tottenham, with a spoiler, went out and won 2-0, which is actually crazy. I never expected that at all. I have Tottenham fairly far down, but to be fair, they usually do have quite a good start to the season and then drop off as the season goes. So we'll have to see whether they can keep this run up or whether they will start to drop off. Next up, it is Bournemouth taking on Wolverhampton Wanderers. Me putting Wolves in towards the bottom of the table with a potential relegation there at the start of the season. I thought that Bournemouth would win 1-0. I was correct. They did win. However, they won 2-1. So we do get 1.5 there because we got this right goal difference. So in the next set of results, we're going to be starting off with Brentford versus Aston Villa. And unfortunately, I went for an Aston Villa win, believing in my team, thinking that we're going to get a 3-1 dub. Ollie Watkins might get a few goals, but unfortunately, we do end up losing 1-0 to Brentford, even though we had like 70% possession too. But it looks like we need a striker. At the moment, we're not scoring any goals. We've not scored a goal in the first 2 games of the season, and Palace is our next game, so that's going to be even harder. So we get 0 points there. The next game is Burnley taking on Sunderland. So we went for a 2-0 win to Sunderland, thinking that they would get the win. But unfortunately, it went the opposite way. So both newly promoted teams getting a win already at the start of this season. So Burnley win 2-0 there at home against Sunderland. I was pretty surprised about that result, to be honest, but you never know. Burnley might be outperforming or Sunderland might be underperforming in that game. I didn't see anything on it, so not too sure really what happened. Next one is Arsenal taking on Leeds. So we thought that Arsenal would win 3-1, and they ended up with a thrashing 5-0 victory against Leeds. So they got absolutely smashed. As a newly promoted team, you don't really want to see that. You'll probably start losing a little bit of confidence after being beaten by that many. So we do get 1 point there for getting the Arsenal win. However, unfortunately, we got nowhere near with the goal difference. So the next set of results starts off very well, as we have Palace versus Nottingham Forest. So we obviously went for a 1-1 draw. Both teams, I'm thinking, are going to do pretty well this season, and I thought they're both at a similar sort of level, and we were correct, as they both did draw 1-1. So we do get the maximum points there of 3, which is good to see, because so far we've not done great this game week. Then next up, it is Everton taking on Brighton. We thought that it would be a goalless affair. However, there were 2 goals scored by the home team Everton, which did beat Brighton in the end. So we get 0 points for that one. It looks like Brighton are struggling this season. I don't know whether they're going to start to bring it up, but you'll notice in my FPL team later on that we're starting to get rid of some Brighton players because they're not performing at all at the start of the season so far. Then finally, it is Fulham versus Manchester United. So we went for a 3-1 win to Manchester United, thinking it was going to be quite a comfortable one after how well they played against Arsenal in the previous week. However, it ends 1-1. Bruno Fernandes missing a crucial penalty in the second half, blazing it over the bar, and I think he blamed the referee for nudging him or something. I'm not too sure. Someone will have to let me know down in the comment section below. But for that reason, we only get 0 points for that game 2. GW2 because we did predict a Man United win and it ended up as a draw. And then finally we had the big one, and it was a great match to watch. I have to say I did watch most of it, and it was Newcastle taking on Liverpool. So we went for the 2-1 win for Liverpool, and it ended up being 3-2. But Liverpool were 2-0 up in the first half with a red card for Newcastle too. Newcastle, with all the spirit and the home support, did manage to bring it back to 2-2. However, unfortunately, in the dying minutes, Liverpool did get the winner with the new youngster, forgot what his name is, getting a goal. First goal for him, and so therefore I get the 1.5 points too. So I'm very happy that he managed to get the finish, as we did get another 1.5 points. That gives us 8 points for this week, which is pretty good. I'll take that, especially compared to last week's 7. So we are improving, and so now we have a total number of points of 15. So hopefully we can start to get some more points. But I'm getting better with the predictions, so fingers crossed this week's will be even better than that. So we're moving swiftly on to game week 3, all of the matches and the predictions. So our first game of the week is going to see Chelsea taking on Fulham. So I think this could be a bit of a whitewash for Chelsea. Fulham did play very well against Manchester United, I do have to say. However, Chelsea, after scoring 5 past West Ham last week, I can't see them not scoring many this week. So I've gone for a 3-1 victory at home. Fulham obviously aren't playing at home either, and I think that probably had a slight effect on how they managed to draw against Manchester United. So we're going to go for a 3-1 win, and fingers crossed we'll see João Pedro score some goals too, as he is part of my fantasy football team. And so the second match is Man United taking on Burnley. So the newly promoted team getting the win last week, and United so far on a draw and a loss. So United really need to start picking it up, otherwise Amorim will probably be in a bit of trouble, and I don't think United will be very confident going into all of the games if they do lose this one. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 win to United. They should be beating Burnley, let's be honest, and if they don't, then I'll be very, very surprised. I can't really go for a draw again. I think they're playing at home. Old Trafford fans surely will pick up the spirit, and hopefully United will go away with a win. Next up is Tottenham Hotspur versus Bournemouth. Tottenham so far with 2 wins, and 2 pretty good wins too, taking on Manchester City and Burnley, I believe, was their first game. I think they will get another win here in this game against Bournemouth. They are at home. I think they've got a really good start to the season too. They're scoring as well, so I'm going to give them a 3-1 victory versus Bournemouth. Bournemouth, I think they have got a few good players like Semenyo who could get a goal. They did obviously get the win last week against Wolves, but it was only 1-0, so we'll have to see how well they do. But like I said, we're going to go for the 3-1 victory for Tottenham. Sunderland taking on Brentford. So obviously Brentford went and beat Villa last week 1-0. However, they only had 25% possession, and then we have Sunderland, who actually went out and lost to Burnley. I think both these teams will finish pretty similarly in the table, so I think it will be a pretty close game. Sunderland playing at home, having that win in the first game of the season 2-0 to, I think it was West Ham. So I'm going to go for a draw in this match. I'm going to go for 1-1. I think it'll be a really evenly paced match, and I think both teams will manage to score a goal. However, I don't think there'll be more than one. Next up, it is Wolves taking on Everton. Wolves having a shocking start with 2 losses. Everton managed to get a 2-0 win against Brighton, so I do believe that Everton will win this game again. I think Wolves play a lot better at home, so I don't think too many goals will be scored. So for that reason, I'm going to go for a 1-0 win to Everton. I think Jack Grealish has made a little bit of an impact too, especially after getting one of the assists, I believe, in the game against Brighton. So we'll have to see how well Everton do this week as to how my predictions go for the rest of the season. I didn't think they would do that well. However, against Wolves, who I think will be near the bottom of the table, I do think they will beat them. So next game is Leeds taking on Newcastle. Leeds obviously coming away with a 5-0 thrashing against them with Arsenal, and Newcastle coming away with a 3-2 loss versus Liverpool. I do believe that Newcastle will get the win. I think they played really well against Liverpool too, so if they can manage to channel that energy into this game against Leeds, who are at home, I do think they will come away with quite a big victory. So I'm going to go for a 3-0 win to Newcastle. Maybe I might be a little bit too optimistic there for them, but I do believe that they will be beating Leeds United. Leeds are at home, so maybe it might not be quite as many goals, but hopefully we should get at least 1 point this week for this match. Brighton versus Manchester City. Brighton with a really poor start to the season with a draw and a loss, just like Aston Villa, and Manchester City with a win and a loss against Spurs last week. Brighton, I don't believe are playing that well at all. Welbeck missing a penalty too. The heads are dropping, I believe, in the Brighton camp. Manchester City obviously lost to Tottenham Hotspur, but I did think they played really well, so I'm not too sure whether City will be losing again this week. So for that reason, I've gone for a 3-0 win to City. I know, another big high-scoring game. I think I will get the point at least for City winning. I don't think Brighton will get a win or a draw, but we will have to see, and maybe I could be completely wrong and I'll ruin my FPL team if I am. Nottingham Forest versus West Ham. West Ham with a really poor start to this season. I can't see them winning many games at the start of this season so far. Maybe they need to make a signing or change of manager because it is going wrong so far. Nottingham Forest have been playing quite well with a win and a draw, so for that reason I am going to go for a 3-1 victory for Forest. I can see them scoring a lot of goals, but I can also see them conceding too. West Ham have managed to score in one of their games as well, so I think they have got the potential of getting one past Forest. I do believe their defence isn't quite as good as their attack. However, I do still think that Nottingham Forest will come away with that 3 points. The next one is huge. Sees two of the top two teams taking on each other. It is Liverpool versus Arsenal. So this could be a really big game. Could be quite violent as well. A few cards coming out, I believe. So I'm going to go for a draw though in this game. So I am going to go for a 2-2 draw. I think both teams will be pretty vulnerable at the back. However, I do think they'll score the same number of goals and then sit back and take the draw of 2-2. So we'll have to see what happens with this game. It could be a really close one, or it could go one way or the other. However, if it comes as 2-2, I'll be pretty happy with that score too, as both teams will only come away with 1 point. And then the final game of the week sees Aston Villa taking on Crystal Palace. Now this is going to be a pretty tough one for Villa. So far we have not performed well at all, and Palace I believe have been playing pretty well. Palace with 2 draws though, unfortunately, whereas Aston Villa come away with a draw and a loss. So both teams could do a lot better than they are doing right now. For that reason, I am going to go for a 2-1 win to Villa. I mean, I'm not very confident with that prediction whatsoever. We are at home, so I don't think we're going to lose this game. However, a 2-1 prediction is probably being pretty generous for how well we are playing at the moment and how well Palace are playing too. And then finally, let's move into the FPL section of the video and see how well we did with the points this week and how well we're doing with the Sheppy Super League. So let's have a look at our team to begin with, starting off with our goalie Sanchez, who only unfortunately got 3 points, even though they did win 5-1 versus West Ham, but they obviously didn't keep the clean sheet, so he lost that there. Nico Williams gets 2 points again, and not getting me many points so far at the start of this season, so maybe I need to think about switching him out. Saliba there with the 6 points for the clean sheet there for Arsenal, so he's done well for me so far. We're keeping him on. Dunk for Brighton, only getting that 1 point, especially after that 2-0 loss, which is not ideal. So I'm thinking of potentially subbing out Dunk. You'll have to wait and see. Mohamed Salah getting 5 points there for the assist, so he'd take that every day of the week. Marlon only getting 1 point for Villa. Again, not great so far for the Villa players. Xhaka gets 4 points there for Sunderland, and I think the only reason he got that was for the defensive contribution, so he got 2 extra points there. And then Cody Gakpo getting me 2 assists, so he lands on 10 points, which is pretty good. We'll take that every day of the week. Watkins, unfortunately, I captained him, made a big rookie error believing in the Villa side, and Villa only end up there with 4 points. Watkins, only ends up there with 4 points. Then Welbeck, who did miss the penalty in the Brighton game, unfortunately gives me 0 points. And then João Pedro, who performed unbelievably against Manchester City, getting a goal and a couple of assists, so therefore got 15 points. Why couldn't we have captained him? I don't know. Our bench unfortunately did quite well too there. Van der Ven getting 6 points. We could have done with him being on there instead of Dunk or Marlon. And so unfortunately for this week, we only get 51 points, which is, it's all right to be fair. I thought that was pretty good, but now when we take a look at the table, you will realise that it is not too good. And so here is the table on screen right now. Look at me, sat right rock bottom with 51 points. That is not good at all. I'm doing absolutely shocking. Tom just jumps above me there with goals on film. Obviously, he's got a lot of Brighton players too, so both of us not doing well whatsoever. And then worse than you think with George dropping all the way down to 6th there. So we're on 102 points, so it's not too far off the top. We just need a couple of good game weeks and maybe we can start jumping up the table. But at the top of the table, we have Kian is too cold. For 2 weeks in a row, he's absolutely smashed it. I mean, he's not got the best team of the week, but he did get 79 points. And I did notice he did captain João Pedro, which was very smart of him. So he's now on 150 points, right at the top of the table, 27 points above second. Reynolds there in second position with oh my god. So we're going to check out his team in just a second, as he got the team of the week with 80, and then in third it is Alex Morrison with Axel FC. So he got another 54 points this week, putting himself on 117. But let's take a look at Reynolds' team and see just how good it was this week. So let's start off with his goalkeeper, who is Sanchez actually. So we had the same goalie as we did, so only getting 3 points there. But then Timber for Arsenal at the back with 24 points, which is actually crazy. He got 2 goals, an assist, a clean sheet, and the bonus. I bet he's kicking himself for not captaining Timber in that game. Then they've got Dalot there at the back, who only got 1 point for him, and Burn, who only got 2. So those two didn't do quite as well there at the back, but the 24 points just makes up for it, let's be honest. He captained Mohamed Salah, so he got 10 points, which is pretty good. 5 on top of another 5 for that assist. Then Neto with 7 points there for Chelsea. Barnes with 2 and Wirtz with 2 too. So Neto again, another really good selection for last game week. Then finally up front, they've got João Pedro and Gaia Correz, which both got unbelievable amount of points. So Gaia Correz getting the 2 goals and the bonus 2, and then João Pedro also getting that goal and 2 assists, like we said earlier, with the bonus 3. So that's in total almost 30 points just between the 2 of those. I bet he's kicking himself for not captaining any of the other 3 players. And then we finally got Wood up top with it, which only got 2 points. But I've just looked at his subs right now. Petrovic in goal got 6 points. So if he was on the pitch, that would have been even better. And then Hudson-Odoi he's got on the bench, who got 10 points, which is actually crazy. Another 16 points sat on the bench right there. So he could have done absolutely amazing if he'd subbed them in instead of the goalie, and maybe instead of Wirtz or Barnes. But that is an incredible week there for Reynolds, getting 80 points, which puts him right up into second place. So well done to him. So with my team doing so poorly 2 weeks in a row, we're going to make some changes. Starting off with the Brighton player, Dunk, at the back. We're going to be getting rid of him because he's not been getting any clean sheets for us recently, and I can't see Brighton holding any clean sheets over the next couple of weeks. So we're going to be switching out him with Goodmanson, who from Leeds United. Probably not going to use him that much, to be honest, but I wanted to save a little bit of money for my second substitution, so we're going to be changing Welbeck. We're taking off Welbeck, and we're going to switch him with Richarlison, who has been playing really well very recently, and hopefully he can get a few goals against Bournemouth this week. So that is going to be the end of the FPL section, but if you did want to join in on the team, I've left a link to it in the description below, and also the code is up here right now. But also, if you did want to predict how well the teams do next week, I'll leave a little section in the description, which you can just copy and paste all of the matches for game week 3 and then just put the scores either side. But I do hope you all enjoyed this one, and if you did, do make sure to smash that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you all in a couple of days with another part run video.